Laurie and I were sort of disappointed with the latest YC request for startup. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The cool things that we're going to start with, and then the stuff that really we didn't like so much, what was missing. So tune in. This is the latest episode of the Lobster Talks. Let's dive in. Let's
Okay,
talk
cool.
about the RFS.
I guess now quarterly, YC is going to publish an RFS, which is now at a more frequent pace in line with the batches. And so the one that they just released last week was focused basically exclusively on AI agents. So what do you make of that? What's your first reaction there? And how do you think that shift compares to sort of previous YC like theme shifts you might have observed in the past?
Well, what's good is we sort of said it would be the year of agents. We've called it again on this show. So I guess, if people are not listening to this podcast every month, what are we waiting for? We call all the latest trends. So it is not surprising that it's about agents, but there are a few surprises in there. I think the first one would be the full stack AI companies. That's the one they put first on the request for startup, which is if you're selling AI tools to companies, you could instead build from the ground up the competitor using AI. And it is interesting. It shows again the mentality of YC that if your tools are better, why just be a shovel seller? Why not actually rebuild the entire thing and compete? I love this mentality because it's the entrepreneur's mentality, it's the owner's mentality. It's not, oh, we're going to sell to them and help them thrive. It's just we're going to kill them. And this could be almost any business. So there's tens of billions and actually hundreds of billions of dollars or company size, hundreds of billions of dollars of company size to go out and compete with this. So that's the first thing I think that was interesting. Another thing I wanted to mention is that now they used to sort of replace the RFS page with the new version, but now they've given you the historics. So you can go back to summer 24, and then you have winter 25, spring 25, summer 25, and sort of see how they evolve, how they shift, what they're asking for. But so it's the year of agents. We know that. We've been waiting for the big agents from OpenAI. They want to sell it, apparently rumored up to 20,000 a month. But it's already what you see with DeepResearch. I've been using DeepResearch more and more, and it's already an agent. You give a task to DeepResearch, and I've estimated personally that the result you get would take a human and not a beginner or intern, but an actual employee, probably a day of work. And you can, DeepResearch does it in an hour on its own. You can just, prompt it and go to lunch, and you come back with DeepResearch. So agents is, it's a huge thing. I want to shout out a bunch of other things from this request for startup, and then we can go into sort of any direction that you want. Another one that I really, really liked that I think is going into the same direction, into this agentic world, is the one from Tom Blumfield of the AI personal assistant. And it resonated so much with me what he said, that today we have very, very smart AI, but the only thing it's able to do today is just like a few reminders and maybe organize your day, maybe, but not really. Like you give it a bunch of tasks and it might be able to prioritize, but that's it. And so what Tom is asking for is a really smart agent that could do the work of a chief of staff or a personal assistant that knows which types of meetings you actually accept or turn down, so it can actually decide for you. And the way it can draft emails and actually send emails. It can organize your day, really like move things around, try to minimize moving to different places in the city. And so he said it's from getting to a to-do list to a done list, because we have a lot of to-do lists, but actually we can have agents who actually do things for us to help us. And again, the market for this tool is almost everyone, and I would love to have that. I have very busy days, obviously, and it's not always easy to stay on top of everything. I'm actually hiring a human to help me right now to do that, but maybe in a few years we can have an AI to do that. And that's an agent, and that's a big agent thing that everybody can get behind and can use. So there's a few other things, not agentic, like deep research on AI. Again, many directions we can take this, but this is sort of the things that resonated with me the most. And I'll end this with the request from the new group partner Tyler, who came in hot with a bunch of stuff. But my favorite, because I've been personally dreaming of this for years, is something to go through your emails with voice. I hate emails. I have too many emails. I use Superhuman, which now has AI features, and they're quite good. But if I could just have one phone call a day and just give sort of orders or answers, and I could be done, that would be my dream. I've actually personally thought of applying to YC with this idea many times. I don't apply to YC because I fund YC companies. I don't have the time or the bandwidth, but years and years ago already I wanted to do that. And so I'm so glad it's finally in the request for a startup, because it's hopefully going to be built. So I cannot wait for this to happen.
Yeah, I've actually seen it in this current batch, which is I think it's Willow. I think the founder is Alan Go, if I
But they're
remember
not
correctly.
doing the email thing. They're just doing speak to your computer. And
Okay.
yeah, this is,
Yeah.
they're competing with this tool that's called, there's a tool Super Whisper. Okay, I
Oh
have it.
yeah.
It's here on my computer. But yeah, everyone's using Super Whisper, and Willow is sort of competing with that. It's cool because Super Whisper is open source and you can use it for free, and Willow is building a freemium version, or actually it's just a paid version. You have a free trial of how many. I tried it. It's pretty good. It's good because it ties into, if they have stronger customer acquisition than Super Whisper with a paid for product, probably it could be a good business. But it's not an emailing thing. It's just talk to your computer, which is also something I've been using a lot now with Super Whisper, because you can speak faster than you can type.
Right.
So whenever you're, being on Slack, on WhatsApp, on emails, you can also speak to your computer. So yes, Willow is also building this YC.
Yeah, I think like that definitely touches on something that they mentioned in there and like has been kind of coming for the last few years. It's like voice as this new interface to interact with computers. Just want to kind of push back, in a way, a little bit on the Tom Blomfield and like Tyler Buscemi ideas because I think they're really
Go
good
ahead.
and they're definitely the ones that like I'm the same as you. I'm like, well, I definitely need that, and there's this element in there where it's almost like the democratization of these things that rich people have been doing for years. And like Uber is obviously a great example of that. Like black private cars is now accessible to kind of everyone. And so this kind of AI personal assistant, it kind of conjures up these images of like how celebrities or how, people in movies, talk to their personal assistant and like that
Exactly.
becoming accessible to everyone. The only kind of issue that I feel like when I see YC talking about that, is like, why would that be a startup, and how do you think about that from an investable way? Because there's this sort of almost problem there where AI personal assistant, it feels like it's kind of being built by everyone. Perplexity. We saw the stuff with Humane, we saw the stuff with Rabbit. Like everyone's chasing that, but then that it definitely is like a feature layer and it lacks the distribution layer. And it's like, why over time is it not just going to be something that gets nailed by the browser or by your operating system? And even in this batch, like not to call them out specifically, but there's like the text AI that where like AI kind of enters your group chat and like people within the group chat can use that to surface conversations that have gone on in that group chat, which sounds like a really interesting thing, but why surely Apple are just going to build that into iMessage or Facebook are going to build that into WhatsApp.
I agree. I mean, this text AI. So yeah, it's a cool YC company where you can have an AI in a group chat, and then you can ask, "Hey, we wanna have a drink.
Mm.
What do you recommend?" You're right. If it takes off and it becomes huge, OpenAI can launch it in probably a day and probably kill them. Now, it's not necessarily a winner takes all market. That's what you have to think about. But yes, remember we've talked into the previous podcast and people ask me about this a lot. How do
But do you
you
not think it's like I would almost say that I think it is winner takes all because like look at the phone
maybe?
operating system. Like I think it's like
Yeah.
90 something percent of phones are either by iOS or they're Android
Yeah.
OS. Like there are no really other competitors in the OS space. And again, it's the same for computers. It's Windows, Macs, bit of Linux or whatever. But so the integration of LLMs at the hardware level just feels like it will kind of disrupt even a lot of the ideas that are brought up from these.
This specific one, I agree. That's what I was saying. Like, maybe it's not winner takes all, but maybe it is. But this is typically a thing I would be worried about investing in this. And so, yeah, my investors ask me all the time, how do you make sure your investments are going to stay relevant in 2 years? This particular one is probably at risk. And I would need to chat with the founders and ask them about their customer acquisition, their retention, and their unfair advantage. But yes, OpenAI or Apple, you're right, just in Apple text group
Mm.
chats could say, now you have Apple Intelligence. Is it as good? Sometimes the big companies, they want to do something, they want to copy or bring in AI into your product, and it doesn't work really well. Where with text AI, it could maybe work much, much, much better. And that could be sort of a way for them to defend it, but it's not guaranteed. So that's a big issue. I absolutely agree. That would be a big thing. Now, if you think of same thing with Willow, by the way, if Apple says, oh, we'll enable voice with AI in your computer, boom, the company might die. So you have to be extremely careful about that. Now, on the distribution, on the bigger picture of the personal assistant, you're right as well, because OpenAI now has memory, and it has also private chats. I've also now I've because I use mostly ChatGPT, I use a little bit of the others. But when sometimes I have a completely different topic, like something for the family, for traveling, for it has nothing to do with my actual job, I make it a sort of a private chat, or it's a chat that disappears, doesn't stay in the memory, not because of privacy or whatever. I don't care, but just because I don't want to bug down the memory with what's not relevant to my work. But then everything that's relevant to my work, I keep it there, I train it, and so I want to make ChatGPT almost like my personal assistant, because it knows me, it knows what I do, it knows what I'm interested in. And so on this, you're correct as well. Why would it be a startup? It could be OpenAI. For sure, they have the distribution. What OpenAI doesn't have today, but I think they can build it very easily, is access to my emails, access to my phone, and maybe my location history. Like, where is he right now? He's at the restaurant, and also OpenAI is not proactive yet. If I had OpenAI that could say, hey, I see you're in Manhattan looking for, and I know from your calendar that you left your meeting, probably you're looking for a nice dinner place. Here's a DeepResearch, or just a, best sushi places in Manhattan because you love sushi, and boom, 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 right? So, and all of this, I think OpenAI can do, and maybe will or should in the near future. And so then what happens with this AI personal assistant thing that YC wants to fund? First of all, that's the request for the next batch. Second, so we don't even know if some of them are going to come to the, often you find the request into the batch, but it's not always. And then, I'm talking about moving in restaurants, but there's so many more layers into that, because you could build a huge company just by being the personal assistant for factories or for CEOs, or just if you're the top assistant thing in the UK and not in the US, or in San Francisco and not in New York or whatever. There's big businesses to be built. Maybe OpenAI ends up coming into the space and taking a bigger share, because OpenAI has 160 million users, I think, now. So yes, you always have the danger of OpenAI. That has not stopped many people from building. And interestingly, we always think that OpenAI is going to kill a bunch of startups, and so far, they actually haven't killed that many. There's a lot of, it's a blue ocean still, because there's a lot of stuff we don't even know we're going to be using. So I wouldn't be like, this wouldn't be stopping me from building this if I was, applying to YC for summer and be like, oh my God, what if? But it's true that you might have to adjust, to pivot, to specialize. Yes, it's true they might come into the space.
Mm. Yeah, I think it really like pushes or forces people to verticalize like quite like very constrained. And I think that's interesting, like especially from I agree with you that it's worthwhile people are building these things, worthwhile people are trying these things. I'm more thinking from like that venture scale perspective. It seems much harder to get there because of what OpenAI have from like, the memory feature is just so incredibly sticky. And then, companies even like Facebook, like if they really start pushing some of the stuff that they're doing with Ray-Bans, or I even think about how I use AirPods as part of my experience of using ChatGPT, like when that starts coming into the OS, the Apple, it just feels very hard to kind of maneuver something that's at venture scale within those fields. But like you say, the verticalization is a really interesting piece, and their first one in the request for startups is the full stack AI companies, which is really interesting. And I think this is something that you posted about last month, where it's about almost like VCs or YC looking at companies that typically like private equity firms would have looked to be rolling up, like how can you now apply this AI component? And
Yeah.
Jared Friedman gives the example of, well, instead of going to build AI software for legal teams and going and trying to sell it to all of these legal firms, just start your own legal firm,
Yeah.
hire no one, and just build a, like, can you go and build a huge AI legal company that doesn't have the issues in scaling that typical service businesses have had
Yeah.
over the past, 100 years.
Absolutely. And that's I think more and more of the companies we're going to see at YC and everywhere else, it's really sort of AI native. And remember, everyone has been comparing, probably rightfully so, AI with the beginning of the internet. It almost touches everything. And you've also had internet first companies being built and trying to compete with legacy players. Think of Amazon versus Walmart. Walmart didn't even have e-commerce for decades after Amazon launched, and today Amazon is much bigger than Walmart. Mostly, even though Walmart is selling online, mostly because, I mean, Walmart is still doing well, but mostly because they're internet first. And so you're going to probably have this as well with AI. And actually, I've invested in a AI first, like in exactly this, which is Harper from a previous batch, which is rebuilding an insurance brokerage from the ground up, AI native. And insurance brokerages have a lot of constraints because of their employees and manual tasks and works. And they're saying we'll automate everything with AI, not hire. It's exactly what you described. I wanted to go back to the AirPods as well to mention to you that, or to our listeners, that I hear now more and more and more and more people using voice with AI with ChatGPT. So I think that's also something to look for. To look for voice, like you said, is just getting so much better, and people are just using voice more and more and more. I personally don't really like voice with ChatGPT, and the reason is it's giving me super long answers. And so maybe I need to instruct it better, prompt it better. It's giving me super long answers so that whenever it's finished talking, it's been talking for like 3 minutes and I forgot what it said at the beginning. And so I've sort of lost my train of thought. And then I said, can you give me shorter answers? And it was like, yeah, I'll give you short answers, yo. And I was like, what are you doing, ChatGPT? Like, I don't, I still want to. So for me, it hasn't worked really well. But what I do is I do it written using tools like Super Whisper to type in my prompt faster. But around me, I hear a lot of people using voice, and also they just updated their memory features. Just last week, it asked me, "Oh, do you want to turn on memory or not?" I went to the memory. The thing was absolutely accurate about me. There's a bunch of useless stuff about my travel plans, preparing a trip, which I deleted because it doesn't have to be there. But now it's remembering more things, and it's telling you on the go when you're prompting something. You could say, hey, remember this as well. Or if it's remembering something you don't want it to, it's telling you memory updated and you can delete it. Like the memory thing, I think is a really key element. And I really hope it can connect to my calendar and my Gmail soon to sort of understand me better. And then it's going to start really becoming on steroids. If you can talk to it as well with your AirPods in your car, be like, hey, I'm driving to this meeting. Can you tell me more about this person? I use it to prepare meetings, to research, funds that I'm talking to. Like, hey, I'm talking to this investor. Can you tell me more about them? What do I need to know? Do some research. Like, it's helping me now. And I think that's the case for almost everyone. The use cases are there's more and more and more and more use cases every day. You're just ramping up your usage. And so it's becoming even more present in our lives. And that's a great sign. I think it's only gonna increase from here.
Yeah, and I like, if I look at my own usage of AI, like I was really starting to use Claude and the Anthropics tool a lot more. But I find that memory is just like this sticky thing that is pulling me back and back into ChatGPT, because I can say like, oh, hey, remember 3 months ago when I was asking your opinion on this email conversation with this guy. Well, okay, this is the context. It's progressed here, and it kind of remembers that and picks it up, and just like the that amount of context that I'm building in there every day is just going to make it incredibly hard for me to ever leave
It's
that
a data moat.
ecosystem.
I mean, we've
Yeah.
been talking about this, is if you have better data than anyone else, usually we say how not to get killed by OpenAI. We say you build data moat, but this is what OpenAI is building
Mm.
themselves. They're building the data moat that all of your data is in there. So that's why I can't wait for them to connect to other tools like my LinkedIn, my inbox, and then, you never get out of there.
And I think this is probably where verticalized AI startups probably have the most opportunity, is creating those data moats in things that are very verticalized, where those existing, say, users or companies are very sensitive or concerned about using OpenAI. It almost feels like anything that's running locally or anything that's like taking really strong care of people's data and privacy is like the obvious way that startups can now like engage with industry and win business in industry, versus something that, at the consumer level, it just seems so hard to go and win that game now.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you go deep into an organization and you're able to access their data, you're going to be able to give them results that are much better than even OpenAI if they don't have access to the data.
Mm.
And so OpenAI is not going one by one chasing every company. And in my latest episode with Rita from Zero Entropy, she mentioned that she believes a lot into small models. And so while big models like OpenAI are killing it, and there's no, putting into question that they're doing useful and amazing stuff, but smaller models trained on specific data, proprietary data, and they can run locally as well, like you just said. They could be on your servers if your data is private, but it's trained on your actual data. I've also invested in some of those companies, and I can think of Sync Labs, who's doing lip sync movement, and they're just absolutely killing it right now, crushing it. And it's trained on just lip movement, and that's it. So OpenAI can't really compete with their general model. If they, spin out a subdivision for lip syncing, they could compete, but they're not interested in that. So smaller models at the side of big models, both of them have very interesting use cases, but people, I think, tend to forget smaller models, and that's a huge, huge use case for the
Mhm.
future as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll be interested to hear your take on this. So I'd say like my feeling about the request for startups is almost like a little bit kind of disappointed in a way. I think that a lot of the startups or categories they mentioned seem like existing category plus AI, or existing category embedded with AI, and not necessarily these kind of bolder
I
claims
agree.
about things that push categories. And kind of want to hear your opinion here as you look at that, like from an investing lens. Like it's so consensus that AI will disrupt industries that it feels very obvious to go, oh, okay, here's the industry plus AI. But there doesn't really seem to be a lot of activity. And even looking at the batch now, the startups that are public, like there's nothing really there that's very overly exciting around something that's new categories. And off the top of my head, what like some of the things that I was thinking that I would see from what they want, and at least in the batches that I haven't seen, is things like I think AI toys, like AI for children, seems like a really obvious space that people could be moving. And then the other one is around even AI friends. Like I think
Yeah.
if you saw I can't remember the podcast, but Zuckerberg was talking about how people have like a
Yeah.
capacity for friends that's typically unfulfilled. And like even in the way that I interact with ChatGPT, like through voice, it's obviously not from like a friend level, but it doesn't feel too far removed from that. And so I'm just really surprised that there aren't startups in this batch that are kind of doing way more bolder, less consensus things. Because like if we go back and we look at previous YC
I was
success
going to say,
cases,
yeah.
Coinbase, Airbnb, like these are very very non kind of consensus things that manage to push the needle, and those are the $100 billion outcomes rather than ones that are kind of like feel like good investments.
I agree with you that it's maybe disappointing, or at least very consensus, very nothing exciting, nothing new. I felt the same when I looked at it, and I was not. You went back all the way to Airbnb, and you're right. It was very non-consensus at the time. I was gonna say it's, in my opinion, quite different from the previous request for startups that they published. If you think at just the previous one for spring 25, there was a lot of very cool, interesting things in there. I have it pulled up here. The secured AI app store, which is probably an obvious need, but no one really talked about it at the time. The Tom Blumfield thing about compliance and audit, where he really wanted to push the envelope there. Again, something you didn't really hear at the time. Again, today maybe seems pretty obvious because they've hammered it so much. But then, AI commercial open source software, they
B2A
talk
was the other one that seemed a bit like more interesting last time, like businesses instead of to consumer or to businesses, like
exactly
business to other agents.
business to agents. I was exactly going there. And there were a lot of stuff that were really sort of new, quote unquote, or interesting, or really at least at the edge, like really pushing the envelope. And for this one, I didn't see this so much. I saw this with the video saying we are happy to fund other AI research labs like OpenAI. They reminded everyone that OpenAI started at YC, was funded at YC, was called at the time YC Research,
Mm.
and so they're looking to fund this. And this is at the edge. This is sort of pushing the envelope again to be like, yes, there's commercial applications. We were happy to fund other stuff, but the rest is very, very, very consensual. They talk about like AI for education, like, yeah, everyone knows that. AI to make better robots, everyone knows that as well. So there's several reasons to that. I think there's two that come to mind. The first one is they moved to a quarterly request for startup. So it's harder to come up with very, very fresh new ideas every 3 months or 2.5 months. So it is, to you and to me, who've been looking at them for many years, it's a little bit of always the same thing. But we have to take the context of some people don't follow as close as we do. And so for them, it might be super new, super exciting. So that's the first thing. The other thing that I think we should take into consideration is, yes, I agree. It doesn't feel maybe too new and exciting, but just those types of startups that, yes, everyone knows about and are consensus, if they're done or executed well enough, and if they go through YC, which obviously gives them better odds, it's probably enough to create billion-dollar companies. And that's what's so fascinating with AI. That's why so many people are following AI and so many investors as well, is the bar is almost very low to build billion-dollar companies because so many things are up for grabs. So many players, legacy players, are going to be disrupted. So I think it's sort of enough. And that's, YC is like everyone else. They want to build billion-dollar companies, but they don't want to build stuff that's too out there, too difficult, too, complex for investors to understand. So if this is enough and makes it work, that's what they're going to go for. So in that sense, they might be right. Maybe that's all you need. But of course, we like YC being at the tip of the spear and at the forefront of innovation. And just like you, I didn't feel that way that much for this one. That's okay. Let's give them a shot. Usually they are. Let's, meet again in 3 months and see the next one. For it will be
Oh,
autumn 25. But and again, those ideas are maybe basic, but software for robots, okay, it's a basic idea, but then what do you actually build?
mm.
Something built into this category could be an amazing, amazing company, or the future of education. It's mentioned twice in the request for startup. It's very, very, very obvious, but what do you actually build for education? Because there's been dozens of them. What if you build a 10x product, right? Same thing, AI for residential security by Tyler Bosmany. I was like, this is not the innovation, but yeah. So, AI toys, AI friends, many other things like, space companies. YC does a lot of space, and this doesn't have anything around space. The latest batch doesn't seem to have a lot of space companies. It's also cycles. We were talking about it earlier. The latest batch, spring 25, no, winter 25, had a lot of hardware, and this one, spring 25, doesn't seem to have a lot of hardware, at least so far. So they sort of have different cycles, different things. And so maybe this is just a very vanilla, consumer AI. Let's see where we get with that. And we'll go for the bigger bets, bolder bets maybe into the next batch.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there's part of that where it's like in the interpretation of those as behaviors, like in the mobile wave or the even the internet wave before that. It's not necessarily that those are kind of crazy things. It's more like interpreting the new behaviors off the back of it. Like Tinder might be a good example here, where online dating or remote dating was a thing. It's just kind of now using the new technology to accelerate the behavior there. So yeah, still obviously some space for disruption. It'd be nice to see less AI developer tools though. The
Agreed.
well, the last thing to touch on or to get you to take on would be just interesting around like sort of two questions from an investor perspective. Like when you're seeing, in the next few batches, probably going to see more kind of AI things or more things that feel like they're converging to overlapping or similar. Like what are you using from a metrics lens to distinguish kind of AI wrappers from really transformative vertical plays, or what unit economics like make some of these AI agent businesses attractive?
That's a great question, and it's good because that's what many investors are wondering. So I'm happy we're able to address that. I think first of all, we touched on it earlier when we talked about text AI, and not to sort of single them out, but that's a good example of, hey, what's the bar for someone else, for big players, Apple, OpenAI, or Android or whatever, to come in and actually replicate it. And it's pretty obvious here that adding Apple intelligence into group text chats is pretty easy, pretty low bar for Apple to do. So that's always an obvious thing. And remember, it's always been the case, even without AI, even before AI. Snapchat at the time, today called Snap, comes in and does stories, and investors should have asked, what's the bar for Mark Zuckerberg and Instagram to implement stories? Because they have much more users than you guys have. And Snap is probably overall a success, but in the latest years, it's been really, really, really struggling. And Zuckerberg just stole the idea, and 90% of people have stories on their Instagram rather than on their Snapchat. So that's always been the case of, think of how can the competition kill you, especially Zuckerberg if you're social media, especially Amazon if you're e-commerce. So there's always been the big players, or Google if you're in the YC just signed a thing saying Google sort of killed every innovation in search for the last 20 years, and that's true. So now you have a new giant. It's called OpenAI. Not just one. You have Claude and you have Grok, but obviously OpenAI is one of the biggest, if not the biggest. And so you have to again ask you the same thing. And again, it could be like Snap. It could have a company that grows so big that at the beginning it seems like a big success, and then OpenAI wakes up and is like, maybe tries to buy them. Remember, Zuckerberg tried to buy Snap. Maybe tries to buy them, and they say yes, problem solved. They say no, like Windsurf. Windsurf finally was acquired. But what if he said no? Then what if OpenAI comes out with their own code editor and tries to kill Cursor and Windsurf? Because it's at a scale now that it's dangerous to them, or that it's, they want to compete in that space. So when you're small, you're too small for them. You're the ant. They don't care. But when you grow and you're not the ant, you're the I don't know, the dog or something, they see you. Now you're dangerous. So replicate or build. Thankfully, replicate or buy. Usually Silicon Valley leans towards buying, because you buy the talent, you buy the know-how, and there's sort of the beginner's euphoria where if you're not in the business, you think, oh, it's so easy, I'll just build a code editor. But then when you're actually in the business, you realize how complex it is. So usually Silicon Valley wants to buy. That's a good news for YC startups. But still, again, going to text AI, if the bar is so low to implement it, you got to wonder. So it's always existed. It exists today. We have a new set of huge players in the space. It's not Apple and Facebook anymore only, because Apple and Facebook are also trying to play in AI, but it's also OpenAI. And then you asked me about metrics. My sort of go-to now that I really sort of want to really remember, yeah, I'll finish my sentence. My go-to is $1 million now that I want to sort of see. Of course, it's not black or white. I'll make many exceptions like I've done before. But what's interesting is we've talked about this as well. The overall revenue of the batch is going up. So when there would be maybe 0 or 1 or 2 companies doing a million, now there might be 5 or 10. And then in those 5 or 10, I'll choose the ones that have, strong retention, not just booms and busts, the ones that I think are not easily replicable, killable by OpenAI or anyone else, the one with the strongest founders, etc., etc. So again, don't sort of quote me on it, because I'll invest if the company is amazing and it only has 3, 4, 500K. Yes, I'll come in for sure. But if there's $1 million of ARR, and by the way, it's usually not in the bank account, it's just signed ARR. It has to be like contracted and signed. Then I think it proves a lot of things. It de-risks a lot of things, including go to market, including building a product that people want. It doesn't solve the, oh, you're growing so quickly, how is OpenAI not going to kill you? So that's something to check on top of this. But that's sort of the metric now that I really think is the North Star for me. And I think more and more and more YC companies are going to cross it. It's not I think, I see it. And including in the ongoing batch, we're still almost a month away from demo day, but I know for a fact that several companies have already crossed it already, which is super impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, cool. Exciting. Let's look forward to the next one where we'll talk about the companies from demo day.
Exactly. So next month in June 2025, I'll be again here recording with Laurie, debriefing and talking about the next batch. I think that's it for today. So Laurie, of course, thank you so much for joining. And to our listeners, if you're still here, please consider subscribing to this podcast. Give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, you can watch us. It's probably even better. Give this channel a subscription, turn on the notification bell, and then I'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.